So the Philadelphia Eagles were clearly one of the big winners of the NFL offseason as they added multiple really talented players to their team and improved their overall roster to ensure that they'd be Super Bowl contenders this season. And a couple of those moves may end up being looked back on as absolute steals, with perhaps the biggest robbery of all coming when they stole Saquon Barkley from one of their arch rivals in the New York Giants. Speaking of which, we just got an inside look into how Saquon's departure from New York and arrival in Philly went down, and safe to say that the Giants were left in shambles while the Eagles made out like bandits. But what exactly makes that the case? Plus, AJ Brown is pissed off at the disrespect the Giants showed towards Saquon Barkley, and it seems like him, Saquon, and the rest of the Eagles are ready to get revenge on the Giants and the rest of the NFL. So let's talk about all that and so much more, and we won't waste any time. Let's get straight into it. Alright, so I want to start off by wishing everyone a happy late 4th of July. I hope all of you had a great time celebrating with friends and family and got to see some nice fireworks. I mean, I personally caught some good ones down in St. Augustine, Florida. As if you missed my last video, I'm currently vacationing down there, but as I'm editing this video, I should be on my drive back up to PA, so things will be back to normal soon. That is for a week before I head down to the Outer Banks, but updates out of the way, I hope you guys had a safe and happy 4th of July, and I know some of the Eagles did, with Lane Johnson decked out in patriotic attire here in this photo, and also much more notably, safety Reed Blankenship getting engaged to his longtime girlfriend Elsa, so congrats to the third-year man out of Middle Tennessee, and best wishes to the two of them as they move forward into their next phase of life. As for on the football field though, this year is certainly going to be huge for Blankenship, as if he performs well enough, he could very well earn himself a longer-term extension to keep him in Philly as the starting safety for years, or if he doesn't perform so well, the Eagles may begin to look elsewhere at the safety position, or hand the starting job over to the now second-year safety Sidney Brown. Now personally, I love both of those guys, and I think that both will eventually end up earning sizable roles on the defense, and I think that Reed actually is going to have a really good year. I mean, he flashed last year multiple times, and again, I honestly feel like he was one of their better defensive players during that season, and he's been hard at work during this offseason getting better, and he also made some plays throughout spring practices, so it seems to me like Blankenship is going to have a great season. And someone else who I expect to have a great season is the Birds' other starting safety in CJ Gardner-Johnson, as after spending an injury-riddled year in Detroit, CJ really seems like he's ready to make a big impact in his first season back with the Birds, and I honestly feel like this signing was one of the Eagles' best moves of the entire offseason because, assuming that he's healthy, not only does CJ bring a playmaking ability back to the safety position that they were missing last year, but he also brings an energy and toughness back to the defense that they simply just didn't have in 2023. So bringing CJ back will surely help to solve that problem a little bit, and it's one of the main reasons that I think this move was so great and honestly kind of underrated. And writer Nick Faria of Eagles Today on Athlon seems to agree with me, as he included CJ on a list of the Eagles' 3 best offseason moves, citing his toughness and mentality, saying, quote, General Manager Howie Roseman acknowledged that the Eagles defense lacked the toughness and swagger necessary to compete at a high level. So what did he do? Bring in the guy who brought both during the 2022 season. People will point to the skill set of Saquon Barkley and Bryce Huff making them better overall signings, but the best move Philadelphia made this past offseason was to shore up the safety position with Gardner-Johnson's return. Eagles fans love their safeties, and they will continue to love Gardner-Johnson. Now, Faria mentioned a few moves that we'll get to a bit later, but again, I definitely agree with him that CJ's return is going to be key for the toughness and attitude of this Eagles defense, and so does Darius Slay, as the star corner recently said this about him on Chris Long's podcast.
He get going, man. If you don't know Chauncey gets it going, man. He got a mouth now, so but he come play with it. He backs his talk up a lot. So
when they picked him up, I was like, yeah, he's the type of dog they need. But he led the league in getting people to snatch his chain. I think 3 guys got personal fouls snatching his chain in one season. He must have a mouthpiece on him, dude.
Oh, he does now. He going. I'm talking about nonstop. But I just had to ask him one time. I said, man, how do you talk this much in the game and still this energized? Like, what do you take that I need to take? Because I'll be tired in the game, and I can't talk to you. But for him, he talking every play. Every play, and it's good energy. It's great energy, man, because he letting everybody have it. He's very communicative.
So I love all that, and I just cannot wait for CJ to be pissing off opposing offenses, both with his trash talk and also with his play and performance all year long for the Eagles once again. But what do you guys think? How important is CJ's return going to end up being? And now, continuing on to another Eagle on the defensive side of the ball, we look at defensive end Josh Sweat, as after not extending but just restructuring his contract this offseason to where he's still only under contract for one more season, his long-term future in Philly is certainly now in question, which has seemingly caused some slight trade speculation in certain spaces, and specifically I'm talking about the people at Bleacher Report and writer Christopher Knox, who included Sweat in a list of the Eagles' top 3 trade candidates ahead of training camp, saying, quote, "The Eagles tried to trade pass rusher Josh Sweat earlier in the offseason. Ultimately, he agreed to a restructured deal, and Philadelphia traded Hassan Reddick instead. Philadelphia has no reason to simply dump Sweat, but if it is looking to secure another player in a trade, he could become a valuable bargaining chip. Sweat is still entering the final year of his contract and isn't a lock to stay with Philly beyond 2024. He'd undoubtedly interest teams in pass rushing help after 3 straight seasons with at least 6.5 sacks. Last season, Sweat also had an impressive 37 quarterback pressures. He recorded 11.5 sacks in 2022 and was a Pro Bowler in 2021. At only 27 years old, Sweat would net a sizable return in a trade. The Eagles won't simply dangle Sweat on the trade market because he's a proven contributor in their defense. Aside from draft capital, though, he's arguably the best realistic trade asset Philly could offer." Now, I definitely don't disagree with everything that the article's saying. I mean, they're right. The Birds looked into trading Sweat earlier this offseason, and his future with the team is definitely uncertain, and they're not wrong in saying that he possibly is the Birds' most valuable trade asset that's not a draft pick right now. But that being said, I personally wouldn't trade him because, unlike Knox, I just don't quite feel comfortable going into the season with only Bryce Huff, Brandon Graham, Nolan Smith, and potentially linebacker Zach Bond, although I think he'll probably play inside linebacker as your edge rushing rotation. And I think with the Birds trying to win this year, Sweat is too talented and too much of a contributor to get rid of right now. But that being said, what do you guys think? Would you trade Sweat for the right price? I mean, I'll say this. If Nolan Smith had already proved himself to be a surefire contributor and a young star off the edge, then I would consider trading Sweat, but that just is not the case. Now, do I think Nolan can't be that one day? No, but he's just unproven at this point, and that can be said about a lot of the young guys that the Eagles have on the team, and specifically on defense right now. And that was reflected in ESPN's ranking of all 32 teams under age 25 talent, with the Eagles being ranked 29th, with writer Aaron Schatz listing guys like Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Sidney Brown, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Healy Ringo, Nolan Smith, and Nakobe Dean as the Eagles' young talent. And to me, that honestly looks like a really promising group, but what do pretty much all of them besides Jalen Carter have in common? They're pretty unproven, so give them time to develop and get their opportunities out on the field, and I think we could see them move up on that list significantly by this time next year. And also around this time next year, I think Giants fans will truly be looking back and just be absolutely sick about what happened with Saquon Barkley this offseason, because I think he's going to go off in his first year with the Eagles and take the offense to a whole new level, while the already previously sad Giants offense is just going to be a shell of itself. And I only bring this up because the first episode of Hard Knocks actually recently came out showcasing the New York Giants and their offseason, so we got some behind-the-scenes looks into Saquon's departure from New York, and I gotta say, from the perspective of an Eagles fan, it's honestly pretty laughable how the whole situation played out. With Giants GM Joe Schoen pretty much thinking that the market for Saquon wasn't going to be that strong when it turned out that there ended up being a bidding war for him between multiple teams. Plus, Schoen seemed to downplay Barkley's value to the Giants and didn't like the idea of trying to sign and trade him due to not believing that many teams would be interested in that. But what I thought was maybe the funniest part was when Giants exec Tim McDonald pretty much asked, well, what would the Giants' offensive identity be without Saquon, as he cited that without Barkley, New York would lose a lot of their explosiveness and touchdowns, and Schoen said that the plan was to address the offensive line in the offseason, which they didn't do, and then for this to be Daniel Jones' year to prove himself, because, as Schoen put it, you don't pay your quarterback $40 million to hand it off to a $12 million running back. And that whole thing is just hilarious to me, because if this is the year for Daniel to prove himself, then why did you pay him $40 million a year to begin with? And also, what makes you think that he's going to become the star quarterback you hope he is when he just hasn't been that for 5 straight years? But probably my favorite part about this whole thing is that the Giants then turned around and signed running back Devin Singletary to a 3-year deal, who's a fine back but just nowhere near Saquon's level. But the cap hits over the next 2 years compared to Saquon's are hilarious, as Singletary's cap hit in 2024 is only $50,000 less than Barkley's, and then Singletary's cap hit in 2025 is around $700K more. So the Giants, at least for these next 2 years, have essentially lost substantial talent at the running back position in Saquon and are now being affected against the cap more with their new lesser running back. So safe to say that the Eagles got away with an absolute robbery here, and I honestly just think that it's hilarious how the Giants pretty much botched this whole thing, assuming Saquon stays healthy and produces like everyone expects him to. Plus, I'm sure seeing these videos about how the Giants front office was talking about him behind closed doors is only going to motivate Saquon to have an incredible year in his first season in Philly. I mean, it's already got Barkley's new teammate and A.J. Brown fired up, as the superstar wide receiver saw those videos and then took to Twitter to say, quote, "The Saquon video fired me up, and it wasn't even about me. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you get yours, fam." So, to me, this again just shows how great of a teammate and leader that AJ actually is, and I just cannot wait to see AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley, and the rest of the Eagles take revenge revenge on the Giants this year. And again, I just cannot get over how the Eagles were able to get away with the robbery that the Saquon signing was, and also just how poorly the Giants really did handle this situation. And now another one of the Eagles moves that I think we could end up looking back on as another robbery is the Bryce Huff signing. As similarly to the Hassan Reddick signing a few years back, the Eagles got Huff on what I'd say is a fairly good deal compared to what the top pass rushers are getting, and if he plays up to his potential, I think he'll clearly be outperforming his contract in a couple seasons, and it'll probably be looked back on as an absolute steal. Now, Huff is going to be relied upon a lot this season for the Eagles defense, and we know what he was able to do in a more limited role last season with the Jets, putting up 10 sacks on playing less than 40% of the snaps. So hypothetically, with an increased role, his number should only go up. So I'm personally super excited to see what Huff is able to do this year in his first season with the Birds and in a starting role, and I really do believe that he's going to be fantastic. But that being said, what do you guys think? Just how good do you think the Huff, Barkley, and CJ signings are going to end up being for the Eagles this season? You can let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And also, while you're at it, make sure you subscribe, and also really importantly, turn on notifications so you're notified instantly when one of these videos just like this is uploaded. We're going to be covering the Eagles year round, including training camp and of course heading into the regular season. So again, subscribe and turn on those notifications. And also, while you're at it, make sure you drop a like to show some support. If you did enjoy this video, I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want to watch another video going over how the Eagles may have potentially solved one of their biggest problems from last season, you can check this out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.